Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, we talked to you in our last video about the amount of rain that we've been getting and how it's really been setting us back on being able to get our garden planted. We've got about 2.5 nice days right now where it's not going to rain, the temperatures are going to be pretty nice, and the sun might even come out for a little while, and we need to take full advantage of these days.
We had a lot of things planned for this garden before we planted. We did a soil test over the winter. It let us know that we needed to add some amendments. The soil test told us that we needed to add organic matter, we needed to add gypsum, and we had planned on really doing a broadcast of our rabbit manure over the entire garden and tilling that in. But because time really is kind of the essence now, because like Kevin said, we have 2.5 days that are nice right now, but the forecast is saying rain again for another week. So we really are in a position where the ground is going to be too wet to till in all of those amendments for probably a week to 10 days or even more. That puts us into the beginning, maybe mid-June to plant our garden. And you guys, we are afraid that that will be just too late.
Now the good news is that we were able to till in some organic matter actually not very long ago. We actually made friends with someone who owns a dump truck. He has a dump truck service. We met him because we actually had some gravel delivered to our farm for our driveway, and got to talking, and we asked, would you ever be willing to deliver a big load of compost to us? So about, 6 or 8 weeks ago, we actually had him, his name is Joseph, we actually had him bring us an entire dump truck load of compost, and we had that dumped here in the garden. So basically we let all of that compost sit spread out on top of the garden for about 6 weeks, and then we tilled that in, like Sarah said, about a week ago. Now, what we've been talking to you guys about is that we were hoping to be able to do a second tilling,
Right.
Where we would add the gypsum and we would actually till in some rabbit manure. Because things just aren't working out that way, we're just not going to be able to do those things this year. And sometimes those are just hard decisions that you need to make. So the garden has been tilled. It just hasn't been tilled a second time.
We are going to do what we've always done and put a nice big handful of rabbit manure down at the bottom of each of our planting holes. That has been so successful for us over many, many years. So we will do that. So it's not like we're going without any fertilizer in the garden. We'll still have that rabbit manure concentrated at the bottom of each of the plants.
Right. So really the only thing that we're not going to be doing this year is the gypsum, but we are hoping that we'll be able to get that in, at the end of the season this year so that it can be in the ground for next year, and hopefully we can avoid all of this next spring, because if the last couple of years have been any indication, this is how it is every year around this time.
Now, the gypsum that we were talking about was recommended. Not only will it add calcium to the soil, but it will help break up our really clay type soil. We were hoping to get that in this year because last year we had a really hard time digging up our sweet potatoes because the ground was just so hard, and our beans had a hard time germinating. So we're hoping that we don't have any of those problems this year with the beans, and we actually have a different idea for sweet potatoes this year.
Right. We're hoping that because we tilled in that compost, that even though we don't get the gypsum in, it'll be a little looser than it was last year, and the beans will do just fine. To be honest, eventually the beans did do just fine last year. We did get a good harvest, so it just took a little more work, and we had to replant some of them a couple times. But you know what? We can't keep looking at the things that we weren't able to do for this year. We need to look ahead at all of the awesome things that we have planned. I still think it's going to be a great garden, and I'm excited to finally get our hands in the dirt.
As you all know, we absolutely love using woven weed fabric, and we are going to be using that this year, but pretty big change.
So we need to go get the weed fabric out of the barn. We're going to show you guys the change that we're doing this year. We think it's going to make things a lot easier, not only here at the beginning of gardening season, but hopefully at the end of gardening season as well. So you guys, this is the change that we're going to be making to our woven ground cover this year. We made a friend at our local farmers market who's a pretty big organic farmer, and he gave us the name of a wholesaler that can sell this to businesses. So to us, because we have our farm, we're able to buy from this wholesaler, and we're able to get our hands on this 15-foot wide weed fabric. Now in the past we've always used the 3-foot wide weed fabric, and we had to put down about 30 pieces of it to cover our garden. This year with the 15-foot wide, we're only going to have to put down 5 pieces. We think that this is going to be a big time saver in the spring and in the fall, and it's going to make storage a lot easier on the off season. So we're excited to be able to use this. It'll still give us enough flexibility to be able to move pieces around every year to rotate where we plant things. We'll just have to get a little more creative. Like this year the tomatoes will be in the front and the peppers in the back or whatever. That's probably not the garden plan. Sarah knows all that. Anyway, we're still going to be able to rotate things around, but it's going to save a lot of time not having to put down as many pieces and not having to put in as many staples to hold everything down. So we're going to get started rolling this out. Again, it's going to take one 300-foot roll to cover this entire garden.
It's been 3 or 4 years since we started using this woven weed fabric, and at first people thought we were crazy. Everybody was saying, oh no, use back to Eden gardening, and that just didn't work for us. So we've been so excited that so many other people are also enjoying this woven weed fabric. We see it all over the place. Tons of people on YouTube, on Instagram, blogs and stuff are really enjoying the benefits of using this woven weed fabric. Overall, it's just such a joy to be gardening with this woven weed fabric because you don't have to worry about the weeds in the hot summer sun. So whether you are enjoying woven weed fabric that is 3 feet wide, 4 feet wide, 6 foot, whatever, we're just so excited to see so many people enjoying gardening and enjoying this method of gardening. We're just so happy to see people outside growing their own food.
Our garden this year is going to be 60 feet by 70 feet. Our rows that we're going to be planting are going to be 50-foot rows. That's what we always do. So we're going to roll this out at 60 feet long. That'll give us 5 pieces out of a 300-foot roll, and that should be enough to do the entire garden. We roll out the extra 10 feet so that we have 5 feet on each end as a walkway. So that's why we do 60 feet, and then our actual planting rows are 50 feet.
We'll also be putting up the electric netting around here so that rabbits and deer, possums, raccoons can't get into our garden. So we also need to plan in that walkway area for the space for that fence.
Yeah, we put the fence on top of the woven weed fabric. That way it doesn't allow the weeds and things to grow up. With the electric netting, the Premier One electric netting, you can't weed eat or anything around it because it's like string basically. So by doing this, it keeps the weeds off of the fence. All right, now that we've got this first edge kind of stapled down a little bit, we'll come back and put more staples in a little bit. We're going to unroll this all the way to the other end of the garden. Now we may need to make some adjustments on this first piece to make sure our garden's at a little bit of an angle, so it's kind of weird every year, getting that just right. If this piece is right, then the rest will be easy.
Ready?
Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this. We've got our measurement here. I'm going to do my best to cut it straight, but at 15 feet, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Now we like to cut these with a butane torch. It works really well because it cuts it and it seals both edges as you cut. So we're going to cut this. I'm going to use the roll itself as kind of a straight edge to be able to cut this. And we'll just get this and then we'll be able to start on the next piece. Now this butane torch I just picked up at Walmart. They usually have them in the plumbing section. But we have a second one as well. That one I bought on Amazon, and I do have a link to that in our Amazon shop if your local Walmart doesn't have them. Well, we got all of the weed fabric down. This will be the end of day one of working on the garden. It ended up being exactly what we thought. It would be 60 feet by about 70 feet, maybe just a little over 70 feet. And this was an awesome job.
So it ended up being 5 pieces. And we really don't think that doing the 5 pieces of the 15-foot wide took us any longer than if we would have done 5 pieces of a smaller width.
Right. So this took us just over 4 hours to do this entire garden. Now, as of right now, all we've done is we've put staples along both sides, both sides of the garden, and then where they overlap, we put staples. But because these are such wide pieces, when we actually get ready to plant, we will have to put more staples in. Right now, this is holding down good. The problem is, and we didn't think about this the first year that we did this, when you start to burn holes in this, every time you burn a hole, it's another spot for wind to get underneath and start to pick it up. So we will need to add more rows of staples once we start to plant, but we don't want to do that until we know exactly where the plants are going to go.
Exactly. But that is it for day one. It's actually time for dinner, so I need to go in, make dinner real quick, and we will see you guys back in the morning for more of this project.
Which for you is probably in just
A couple
1
seconds.
second.
Yeah.
Well, we told you we'd be right back. It is now the next day. We just got done with morning chores. It is already getting hot out, so we need to get to work.
So the next steps for getting the garden in and preparing to put the garden in, we need to mark out our growing rows. We need to put up any of the trellises that we need. And we're going to be using trellises for tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers. We're going to be doing some half-runner beans.
Canada crookneck squash.
Canada crookneck squash. And I think that's all the trellises that we
Right.
need. But that's still quite a bit of work before the garden is ready to start planting.
We are hoping to get all of that accomplished today. Like I said, it's getting hot. The high today is going to be in the mid 80s, and it is humid because of
Yeah.
all that rain we've gotten for the last week. So we need to get to work. The first thing we're going to do is figure out our spacing. Actually, we already have it figured out, but
Yeah.
Sarah's going to go and spray paint where each of the rows is going to go. And as she goes along, she'll tell you what's going to go in each row.
Yes. So our 15-foot wide weed cloth here, we're actually going to be putting 3 growing rows in each sheet. So there's actually going to be 5 feet in between each of our growing rows. I know that sounds like a lot. You know, a lot of people have a lot less space in between their growing rows. We really like 5 feet in between them. It gives us a lot of room to maneuver during harvest time. And when we do planting initially, it seems like that's way too much space. But when all the plants are just humongous and almost touching each other, it really is nice not to have to be like basically going on a hunt through like the forest trying to harvest your food. So 5 feet in between each row, we're gonna get 3 planting rows in each of these 15-foot sheets. Just so that I don't get confused when we're, you know, doing all of this, I'm just gonna mark each growing row with a dot. You can see that we had spray painted a couple dots here when we were figuring out what we were gonna do, and we ended up realizing that that is not the layout that we wanna use. So I'm going back and re-spray painting the correct rows. Okay, so let me tell you what we're going to be planting in which row. Now, every year we do try to mix up where in the garden space we plant our plants so that we're not planting tomatoes in the same spot that we planted tomatoes last year. It's just better for the soil, better for disease prevention, better for pest prevention. So this year, the first 2 rows right up at the front of the garden are going to be for tomatoes. Then we're going to have a row of peppers. This year we decided to do half a row of okra and half a row of cucumbers. So that's next, followed by a row of bush green beans and a row of half-runner green beans. This row here, we're going to be planting a third of a row of tomatillos, and then a third of a row of zucchini and a third of a row of lemon squash. Now we're going to be holding off quite a bit to plant both the zucchini and the lemon squash because we have such trouble with the squash bugs. Last year we tried some zucchini in pots later on in the summer, and they did way better waiting until kind of that initial bug season was over. So that's our plan here. At this back row here, we're going to be planting the Canada crookneck. You'll probably notice that we skipped a row here, and that's to allow the Canada crookneck to kind of sprawl out here. Even though we're going to have a trellis here, they do sprawl out a lot too, quicker than I can train every single branch of the plant. So we'll give it some space here. It will have some space over here to grow. And then the back part of the garden is going to be dedicated to watermelons. We're going to be doing 2 separate plantings of watermelon, probably 2 weeks apart, really, to spread out the harvest. We're going to be doing our favorite variety called strawberry watermelon, and then we're trying a new variety this year called Sweet Dakota. It's a little bit smaller, not too much smaller, but it's a little bit smaller than the strawberry watermelons, and it's supposed to have a lot less seeds. Now, it's still an heirloom variety. It will still have seeds, but a lot less. We're wanting to try those to see if we can freeze dry them and have some amazing watermelon, basically candy. We've heard that that is fantastic. So that is the rest of the garden. We're going to have lots of watermelon. Everything else is concentrated in the front of the garden area. So I know we're going to get a lot of comments like right at this point. That's all you're growing? What about onions? What about sweet potatoes? What about sweet corn? What about, everything else that you may wonder if we're growing? Now, this isn't our only garden. We have a couple other areas in the homestead that we're planting. We have a big sweet corn patch that we're going to be planting, not quite yet. Sweet potatoes in another area, onions in another area, some potatoes in buckets. So there is lots more growing that's going on and is planned for the summer. Not everything will be in this garden.
Now that we have our rows laid out, we know what's going where. It's time to start putting up our trellises. Now, we get a lot of questions about what we use for trellises, and the real answer is we use whatever we have on the farm at the time as far as leftover fencing goes. Now, we've been using the same pieces of leftover fence for several years now, but this is just field fencing that we had. At the end of a roll, you have some left over. This is what this is. It's just field fencing, but you can use welded wire fence, you can use cattle panels, any type of used fencing that you don't need for somewhere else, you can use as a trellis for your garden. Sometimes we have 3 sections to make up one full row. It doesn't really matter. Your tomato plants are not going to complain that you have the wrong type of trellis, so just put up whatever you have. And then we use 6-foot T-posts. This fence is about 4 feet tall. So when we put this up, we actually started about a foot off the ground. We don't put it on the ground like you would a fence. We started about a foot up off the ground so that the tomatoes and whatever's growing have time to grow up a little bit and then start, using the trellis. So that's what we're going to do now. Again, our rows are about 50 feet long. So we're going to roll this out and then we're going to lay out T-posts. We'll use 5 T-posts per 50-foot row. All right, first trellis is up. This will be where tomatoes will be growing. The second one will be tomatoes as well. All of our trellises, when we put them up, we don't worry a whole lot about, pulling them super tight, not like you would if you were putting up a fence. We're not going to pull out the fence stretcher and pull them nice and tight. They're just here for support. They're just here to help hold the plants up. That's all they're here to do. Again, you guys don't worry so much about all the little details. The main thing is you got to get the work done. That's what we need to do now. We've got 5 more of these to put up. We're not going to show you every step of every one because they're all going to be pretty much exactly the same. So we'll check back in with you when we're partially done, or maybe even when we're completely done.
Well, all the trellises are up. Everything is ready to go. Now we have about a day and a half worth of nice weather left before it's supposed to rain again. So we are going to do our best to get this entire garden planted. We also need to put up our fencing to keep all the critters out. So stay tuned for that coming up.
Yeah, it's going to be a big job to try to get it all done, but I think we can do it. We're just going to have to work some long hours to get it all done. But like we told you at the beginning of this video, after that dry spell, we're supposed to have like another week of rain. So we need to get it done. Otherwise, we're going to be too late.
We're going to have rain, but we're also going to have warm weather, which
Right.
is absolutely perfect for germinating our bean seeds, our
Right.
okra seeds, and squash, all that kind of stuff. So it's good. It really will be perfect timing, even though we weren't able to till in the amendments that we wanted to. We're just feeling a little bit pressed for time.
Right. So you guys, keep watching for the video coming up where we get this entire garden planted. If you're enjoying our videos, I sure hope that you'll hit that subscribe button before you leave. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And as always, the absolute best way that you can help us here on the homestead is by sharing our videos on all of your social media.
Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care and God bless.
God bless.